Namaskar. A warm welcome to World News, an Indian perspective on All India Radio. This is Tanvi Khurana, and with me is Renu Kataria, bringing glimpses of the major developments of the day from across the globe. Over next half an hour, we shall bring you the latest from the world of politics, economy, sports, entertainment, and more. The headlines. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi leaves for Japan to participate in Quad Leaders Summit in Tokyo, also to hold bilateral meetings with his Japanese counterpart Fumio Kishida, newly elect Australian PM Anthony Albanese and US President Joe Biden. Strengthening of India-Japan special strategic and global partnership to be in focus during his visit to Japan, says Prime Minister Modi. World Economic Forum meeting begins in Davos. Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal leads Indian delegation. In Australia, newly elected Labour Party leader Anthony Albanese to be sworn in as Prime Minister on Monday. India to clash with arch-rival Pakistan in first match of Asia Cup Hockey Championship in Jakarta on Monday. Ons Jabeur and Dominic Thiem crashed out in first round of French Open tennis tournament. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has left for Japan Sunday evening on a two-day visit to Japan to participate in the Quad Leaders Summit in Tokyo. Apart from participating in the Quad Summit on Tuesday, Mr. Modi will hold bilateral meetings with US President Joe Biden, Prime Minister of Australia Anthony Albanese and Prime Minister of Japan Fumio Kishida. A report.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi said strengthening of the India-Japan Special Strategic and Global Partnership will be the aim of his visit to Japan. In his statement ahead of his visit to Tokyo, Mr. Modi said he will also participate in the second in-person Quad Leaders Summit. On Monday, Mr. Modi will engage with the Japanese business community and the Indian diaspora. The upcoming Quad Summit in Tokyo will provide an opportunity to take stock of the progress made so far on Quad's initiatives and also give guidance for the future. Prime Minister Modi will have a bilateral meeting with US President Joe Biden. His meeting with President Biden will mark continuation of these high-level dialogues and provide guidance and vision to take the relationship forward. Mr. Modi will also meet his Japanese counterpart on the sidelines of the summit. This meeting will be an opportunity to carry forward the high-level engagement between the two countries as also to advance bilateral cooperation agenda. In the bilateral meeting with the Australian Prime Minister, the two leaders would review the India-Australia Comprehensive Strategic Partnership and exchange views on regional and global developments of mutual interest. Mr. Modi will also interact with the Indian diaspora in Japan. Talking about the Prime Minister's visit, Foreign Secretary Vinay Mohan Kwatra said Japan is among India's most important partners and Mr. Modi has referred to the relationship as one of the most natural in the region.
The economic pillar, and within the economic pillar, the commercial, and within the commercial pillar, the business-to-business partnerships, are very critical segment of our relationship. It frankly includes trade, which is crucial, technology and investment partnerships. Within the broad rubric of trade, investment and technology, there is a whole set of specific areas in which this partnership is to be taken forward.
Indian Ambassador to Japan, Mr. Sanjay Kumar Verma said that the world has much expectations from India. Mr. Verma also said that stability in Indo-Pacific is important for many reasons, including security and mobility of people. Reshma Tiwari for World News, All India Radio.
In today's Hotspots section, we bring you a discussion on PM's visit to Japan and Quad Summit. In conversation are Sheelkant Sharma, former diplomat, and Manish Anand, journalist.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi is embarking on his 2 days Japan visit at the invitation of the Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida. Fumio Kishida was in India in this year, and the two countries have a very robust bilateral relationships, and Japan has committed 5 trillion yuan investment in India over the next 5 years. Ambassador Sharma, we know that Japan is the biggest investor in India. How important is PM Modi's visit to Tokyo?
Prime Minister Modi's visit to Tokyo actually is the epitome of India's relations in Asia. India's relations with Japan are uppermost as far as the Asian continent is concerned. And this relationship has been very assiduously nurtured by our Prime Minister and his counterparts in Tokyo, the earlier Japanese Prime Minister and now Mr. Kishida. So there is about 8 years of continuous, consistent build-up. And Japan has been investing in India in diverse areas. They're building up metros, for instance, and building up power plants, and also in the major projects of the government of India, Japan has a role. Its investment is very high, and there is also a mechanism between India and Japan to steer this bilateral cooperation, to monitor it, and to give it the necessary thrust time and again. So there is this periodic meetings between our ministers of finance and commerce and their Japanese counterparts. And Japan and India also venturing into some limited defense cooperation. High technology trade remains the high water mark for relationship with these countries. There is also the skilling in India. India offers highly skilled human resource, and the Japanese can build upon that for working on projects in third countries. And this has also been in the works. For instance, in Africa, there has been India-Japan cooperation in projects. Even as recent as today, Japan and India are helping Sri Lanka come out of the economic difficulties which Sri Lanka is facing. Japan has offered $1.5 billion only for food assistance to Sri Lanka. And India is doing its own bit in a very major way and very promptly. We have helped Sri Lanka with 40,000 tons of diesel and the next tranche which has gone there. So India and Japan see Asian countries and our neighbors and subcontinent with a similar outlook. So in that sense, the scope of cooperation between India and Japan actually is limitless. Now, PM's bilateral meetings with Prime Minister Kishida will give further boost to our cooperation in each of these areas.
Indeed, Ambassador Sharma, after the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic and the subsequent disruptions in the supply chain worldwide, India has positioned quite well to attract the investments in new technology and possible shifts in the manufacturing basis. In fact, Japan being trade partner of India, many of their companies are operating in India. The government of India has put in place a lot of production-linked incentive schemes in various sectors. So while the Prime Minister will have over 30 meetings in Tokyo, which will be attended by many of the CEOs of the company, do you think India can tap the Japanese potential to leverage the kind of skill that they have to position India as an alternative to China in the global supply chain?
Yes, that's the goal which Japan and India are pursuing, that India offers itself as a problem-free, open, democratic, law-abiding country which respects international law and which plays by the rules of the game. This is and it's a democracy, and Japan also has a similar setup. So this is the point of convergence between the two. And they want to build up this bilateral cooperation to substitute what has been now problematic for Japan in the wake of an assertive China, which has created problems in South China Sea and also in the Sea of Japan. And, the threats which have been now almost regular coming from Beijing of various kinds. So in order to bring a kind of an economic independence from China and independence from China about supply chain, this building of India-Japan relationship is very critical. Like, for instance, take the COVID thing. Now, of course, this is happening under Quad, but the vaccine production, and there is this whole vaccine initiative, which Americans have proposed, President Biden has proposed, but India and Japan are part of that. And the whole idea is to produce and scale up production of vaccines to meet demands for third countries in the world. India has done that on its own steam so far. And India has met the enormous demand the country itself has of vaccination. And our figures of what we have achieved in terms of vaccination for the COVID are astounding. But we have also helped others. So this process will be given a further boost by India-Japan cooperation. Similarly, in semiconductor production also, there is a new area which is being looked into, as Prime Minister in his own initiative has mentioned that in the recent speeches, he has time and again emphasized that semiconductor production is an area where India has to scale up. We have to explore and get into this whole thing. And we can have cooperation with Japan in this area. So high technology is one field where new technologies can be the area where, cyber security could be one more area. So if you were to list these new technologies which are on the horizon, both India and Japan can work together. That's why I think PM's meeting with these 30 business CEOs in Tokyo are going to be very useful and very poignant.
Indeed, Ambassador Sharma, the Quad meeting, this is a second in-person Quad meeting which is taking place on May 24. And on the sidelines, PM Modi will have bilateral meetings with American President Joe Biden and the newly elected Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese. But in the context of the Quad meeting, the Americans have come up with a new set of proposal which is being widely talked about, and that is Indo-Pacific Economic Forum. That basically talks about supply chain, digital economy, technology, etc. So do you think that India has an opportunity in this proposal if this fructifies?
Yes, this proposal is very much our stream because these are the areas where we want to work. And as our Foreign Secretary has mentioned in his briefing before Prime Minister's visit, he spelled out these areas for cooperation. Supply chain resilience and the need for new and diverse technologies. For pharmaceuticals, for instance, for vaccines, these are all areas where we got to work with Japan and within the Quad. President Biden actually has announced that Quad is working to get, there's this vaccine initiative, which I mentioned earlier also, where a Johnson & Johnson vaccines, for instance, from the biological and facilities in Hyderabad, that is one area where we can get movement forward because that has had a problem getting regulatory approvals. And the idea is to spur them so that we can get into production. And it's a very large-scale production. And also to get clearance from World Health Organization. So this is what Americans are saying. And India is actually corresponding to that. Then India is also working with WHO for speeding up the processes of clearing these vaccines, which we have submitted to them. And they wanted some technical issues to be resolved, for which India has submitted further details.
The Quad's main concern has been rules-based and free navigation in the Indian Ocean. And we have seen and noted with concerns about the Chinese aggression in these areas, which have many a times alarmed small island nations and neighboring countries. And the recent security pact with the Solomon Islands has somewhat rung alarm bells in Australia, because that happens to be the nearest country for that. Solomon Islands happens to be far off from China, and that island nation, group of islands basically, had played a key role in the Second World War. So do you think that the security aspect is going to dominate in the second in-person Quad meeting?
These are the things on which there are dual dimensions. For instance, about the sea lanes, for the integrity of the sea lanes and open sea lanes, there has been a decision now to put under the Quad auspices satellite surveillance of the seas in the Indo-Pacific so that you can get information about, for instance, illegal fishing, which has been indulged by China in a massive scale. So with satellite surveillance, advanced information will be made available about possibilities of this particular aspect. Now, illegal fishing has direct impact on the economies of the countries which are involved. Now, satellite surveillance can also give you information about movement of ships and naval movements. So that has a security-related dimension. Same way in Solomon Islands, the security dimension, it is close to the American base, and the Chinese are thinking of setting up a base, to which Australia has vehemently voiced opposition. And US has also, senior officials have visited Solomon Islands, and the Solomon Islands are now denying that they are doing anything like that. It's somewhat akin to what Chinese were doing in Sri Lanka 2-3 years back. And then Rajapaksa government denied what they are not giving Chinese any base and no base facilities. So this is the Chinese way. They go about it very surreptitiously and they keep working on it and then suddenly spring a surprise, which they have done in the case of Solomon Islands. But Australians are now alive to it, and despite the elections and the new Labour government coming, on China and on Solomon Islands, I think the position of the Labour Party and the previous government are similar. So Australia will join with the US. Then there is this deal which is there, Australian, US, UK nuclear submarine deal, which will allow Australia to develop nuclear submarine, which is an important dimension for surveillance of the undersea movements in the Indo-Pacific. So these are some of the security-related cooperation, which are they are part of the other three countries, which are part of the AUKUS. But as far as India is concerned, India's cooperation is connected with the economy and ensuring that our economic development is unhindered, our trade is unhindered. More than 60% of our trade is with the sea lanes which go through South China Sea and the Straits of Malacca. So we want to ensure these are problem-free.
Ambassador Sharma, thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you.
The annual meeting of World Economic Forum began on Sunday at Davos in Switzerland. The city is hosting the event yet again after a gap of nearly 2.5 years. The meeting will continue till May 26. Global leaders, including from India, will participate in the international event. Meanwhile, talking to a TV channel, WEF's President Bosch Brende said that for India, things look better while other countries are beginning to struggle. He said that India is likely to grow at 8% and looks better placed. WEF's Executive Committee member Sean DeClean said that the forum is looking at significant food production challenges across the world. Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal will lead the Indian delegation at the 5-day meet. The delegation will include Health and Family Welfare Minister Mansukh Mandavia, Petroleum and Natural Gas Minister Hardeep Singh Puri, Chief Ministers and Senior Ministers of 6 states, Madhya Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, Maharashtra, Karnataka and Telangana. Several industry leaders will also participate in the deliberations of World Economic Forum. This event would further help reinforce country's position as an important and relevant stakeholder in shaping the global narrative, particularly as India assumes presidency of the G20 next year. This is All India Radio giving you the news. For quick news updates round the clock, follow us on Twitter at AIR News Alerts.
In Australia, newly elected Labour Party leader Anthony Albanese will be sworn in as Prime Minister on Monday. Outgoing Prime Minister Scott Morrison, who was heading Liberal National Coalition, conceded defeat and thanked the Australian people. Counting of votes is still going on, and it is unclear whether Labour Party can get 76 seats to secure a majority in the 151-member lower house of Parliament. If the election results in a hung parliament, Greens and Independents could wield greater influence in framing the new government's policies on the issue. Mr. Albanese, who will be heading Australia's first Labour government in almost a decade, has vowed to take the country in a new direction with a big shift in climate policy. Climate change has been a key concern for voters after 3 years of record-breaking bushfire and flood events.
Russia has halted its gas exports to neighbouring Finland in the latest escalation of dispute with Western nations. Russian gas giant Gazprom said it has completely halted gas supplies to the Finnish gas company since the company has not received payments in rubles. The Finnish state-owned gas company Gasum said natural gas supplies to Finland under Gasum's supply contract was cut off by Russia on Saturday morning. In a statement, the Finnish company said during the upcoming summer season, Gasum will supply natural gas to its customers from other sources through the Baltic Conductor pipeline. Gasum's gas filling stations in the gas network area will continue normal operation, it added. The move comes after Gazprom demanded that European countries pay for Russian gas supplies in rubles because of sanctions imposed over Moscow's military action in Ukraine. Finland has refused to comply. This development also comes a few days after Finland and Sweden submitted letters formally expressing interest in joining NATO.
In Istanbul, tens of thousands of people have rallied in support of the opposition leader Canan Kaftancıoğlu. She has received a criminal conviction for insulting President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and the Turkish state. The 50-year-old secular Republican People's Party's CHP leader now faces a suspended prison sentence. Some of the charges relate to messages published on Twitter 10 years ago.
In Bangladesh, the Organization of Liberation for War Fighters, Mukti Jodha Mancho, took out a protest rally in Dhaka on Saturday against the proposed visit of a delegation of journalists to Pakistan. Speakers at the rally called the proposed visit of media persons to Pakistan as an anti-Bangladesh conspiracy of Pakistan. President of the organization, Aminul Islam Bulbul, presided over the human chain, which was conducted by its General Secretary Al Mamoon. Several leaders of the organization, including Rahul Amin Majumdar, advisor, Sonet Mahmood, President of Dhaka University branch, and Tohidul Islam Mahim, also spoke on the occasion. President of the Dhaka branch of the Mukti Jodha Mancho, Sonet Mahmood, called upon the Bangladesh government to stop the conspiracy of Pakistan's effort to take the media delegation to Pakistan. He said the Pakistan embassy should be kept under strict watch. He threatened to launch a movement if immediate action is not taken in this regard. President of the organization, Aminul Islam Bulbul, said the Pakistani embassy has started the conspiracy of removing the pro-liberation government from power. The fourth edition of the Indian Navy-Bangladesh Navy Coordinated Patrol COPAT commenced in the Northern Bay of Bengal on Sunday. During the two-day exercise, the Indian Navy and Bangladesh Navy units will undertake joint patrolling along the International Maritime Boundary Line, IMBL. The last INBN COPAT was conducted in October 2020. Two indigenously built IN ships, Kora, a guided missile corvette, and Sumeda, an offshore patrol vessel, are participating in the exercise along with Bangladesh Navy ships BNS Ali Haider and BNS Abu Ubaida. In addition, maritime patrol aircraft of both navies would also be participating in the coordinated patrol. The regular conduct of COPATs has strengthened mutual understanding and enhanced interoperability between both the navies in countering transnational maritime threats at sea, said the official press release of the Indian Navy.
India's Ministry of External Affairs has termed President Ramnath Kovind's visit to Jamaica and St. Vincent and Grenadines as historic. Briefing the media, Secretary East in the MEA, Saurabh Kumar said that the warm reception accorded to the President in both the Caribbean nations shows our deep connection with the two island nations. Secretary also said that Prime Ministers of both nations appreciated that India has reached out to them despite India being a big nation. He made special reference to the vaccine provided by India to these nations during COVID pandemic. Prime Ministers of both the nations also appreciated India's independent position in various multilateral fora and convergence of interests in building a representative and fair world order.
Arch rivals India and Pakistan will meet in the first match of the 11th edition of the Asia Cup Hockey Championship at the GBK Arena in Jakarta, Indonesia on Monday. The match will begin at 5 p.m. IST. Defending champion India has been placed in the Pool A with Pakistan, Japan and host Indonesia. India will take on Asian Games gold medalist Japan in the second match on May 24 and meet hosts Indonesia on May 26 to round off their league engagements. India and Pakistan have won the tournament 3 times each, while South Korea is the most successful team, having clinched the title 4 times in 10 previous editions. In the previous edition of the Continental Tournament, which is also the World Cup qualifier, India had defeated Malaysia 2-1 in the final held in Dhaka. The top 3 teams at the end of the Asia Cup will qualify for next year's FIH Hockey World Cup to be held in Bhubaneswar and Rourkela. The Asia Cup is being held after a gap of 2 years as it was postponed last year due to the COVID-19 pandemic.
French Open tennis tournament, the second Grand Slam event of the year, has begun at Roland Garros in Paris. The day one of the tournament witnessed a major upset as world number 6 Onriobor gets knocked out in the first round of women's singles. The Tunisian star lost to Poland's 56th ranked Magda Linette 3-6, 7-6, 7-4, 7-5. Two-time French Open runner-up Dominic Thiem also crashed out in the first round of men's singles, losing 6-3, 6-2, 6-4 to Hugo Delaine of Bolivia.
In IPL cricket, Sunrisers Hyderabad have set a victory target of 158 runs before Punjab Kings at the Wankhede Stadium in Mumbai. In reply, Punjab Kings were 156 for 5 in 15 overs when reports last came in. Earlier, Sunrisers Hyderabad won the toss and opted to bat first.
Now let us take a look at the major developments around the world as reported in the foreign press. Now let's have a look at the press reports on China. Reuters reports that Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida said on Saturday that he was disappointed in China's efforts to develop areas in the East China Sea, saying that it was unacceptable. Nikkei Asia reports in an opinion piece that China's own hot-headedness reinforces Quad's strategic importance. Prasar Bharati's Beijing reports that BRICS New Development Bank announces the launch of its Indian regional office in Gujarat International Finance Tech City.
Now let's have a look at the press reports in Afghanistan. Hama Press reports that the United States Department of State once again called on the Taliban government to reopen high school for girls in Afghanistan, saying action is rather needed than merely giving false promises. Tolo News reports that farmers express concerns over the reduction of crop yield caused by drought this year. They also called on the Ministry of Agriculture, Irrigation and Livestock to provide them with higher quality seeds. Ariana News reports that the UN Secretary General's Special Representative for Afghanistan, Deborah Lyons, says the new Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan government has an unclear strategy in terms of leading the political and economic situation. Bakhtar News Agency reports that the Foreign Minister Amir Khan Muttaqi on Saturday talked with U.S. Special Representative for Afghanistan Thomas West, Reena Amiri, Women Special Envoy for Afghan Women, Girls and Human Rights. NDTV reports that women presenters on Afghanistan's leading TV channels went on air Saturday without covering their faces, defying a Taliban order that they conceal their appearance to comply with the group's austere brand of Islam. Tolo News reports that former President Hamid Karzai in an interview with CNN said that covering faces is not hijab and the use of the burqa is not Afghan tradition, but burqa has come to Afghanistan probably 200 to 300 years ago and countryside women don't wear it.
Now let's have a look at the press reports on Bangladesh. Bangladesh has further tightened restrictions on foreign travel by employees. The Bangladesh Bank on Sunday banned bankers from all kinds of training, seminars and workshops home or abroad at the expense of foreign currency, dollars, in a bid to defuse the forex reserve crisis, reports Prothomolo. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina on Sunday asked for appropriate development planning taking into consideration the features of different regions, reports Dhaka Tribune. A quick look at the headlines once again. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi leaves for Japan to participate in Quad Leaders Summit in Tokyo, also to hold bilateral meetings with his Japanese counterpart Fumio Kishida, newly elect Australian PM Anthony Albanese and US President Joe Biden. Strengthening of India-Japan Special Strategic and Global Partnership to be in focus during his visit to Japan, says Prime Minister Modi. World Economic Forum meeting begins in Davos. Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal leads Indian delegation. In Australia, newly elected Labour Party leader Anthony Albanese to be sworn in as Prime Minister on Monday. India to clash with arch-rival Pakistan in first match of Asia Cup Hockey Championships in Jakarta on Monday. Ons Jabeur and Dominic Thiem crashed out in first round of French Open tennis tournament.
And now, before we end, let us listen to Mahatma Gandhi's favorite bhajan, Vaishnav Jan, by artists from Japan.
with that, we end this bulletin. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow with the next edition of World News.